How you doing? Good afternoon. It's 42 degrees, but the winds are really something else. And so they're pushing the temperature down, and this evening it's going to be below zero. As part of the Jefferson weather report, I think Thomas Jefferson, if we were alive today, would be fascinated by the Arctic winds coming down to the lower 48 because of global warming. Ironic, wouldn't you say? And my stepdaughter's trying to travel to be here, and the flights have been delayed somewhat because they're being cautious about the winds at the airport. Wind shear has caused accidents in the past. I can't say, because I haven't reviewed any weather reports today, about what conditions are concerning them, but that's usually one. The problem with our current discussions is a lot about how we communicate and how we censor and how we lie. I'm not saying you and I censor or lie, but there's a lot of it going on. And I've said before that free speech is prepositional. That is, you get to say something, but the preposition is how free is it afterwards. And we can point to history and to other dictators who have compromised our free exchange of ideas and thoughts on matters. But we have in this world right now exactly the kind of censorship and punishment for speaking that we might expect here if Trump should win the election. So, for example, a statement like "No to War" by Alexandra in Russia got Alexandra prosecuted. A fellow wearing a long coat and a sign that said "I don't want war," he was prosecuted. It's worse than that. A person with a cape that had the colors of Ukraine, that was prosecuted. There was a woman who made a remark about, if you want to buy a coffin, go by the War Office. And you get the idea that the protest is driving Putin crazy, and so he's prosecuting people for it. This is what we can expect here. Ultimately, sooner or later, in small and large ways, if Trump has his way, we'll continue to get lies, and when we seek to contradict what is said that's a lie, we will be prosecuted. So, in terms of war, we should be concerned, I think, that there have been more strikes against Yemen. And along the same line, I don't know if you've heard any of the speeches, but there's an Irish barrister, and she's very effective. And I hate to say that what she had to say was about Israel's role in war crimes. Another fair question is, are we also going to have investigation and prosecution of war crimes against Hamas? I don't think anybody comes out looking good there, but that's the way it is these days. The word on those of you out there who are concerned about pot, well, there was a report the other day that said there's nothing risky about it, and it's not normally abused, and there are 24 states that basically allow it for recreational use, and the feds keep telling lies about it, and it's listed in the drugs as a Schedule 1 drug, which is where heroin is, rather than, say, a Schedule 3 judge, which would be listing it with testosterone. So, be an ironic combination. The concern I have about capital punishment extends to the massacre. You may remember an 18-year-old white supremacist went to Buffalo and killed 10 black persons and was ultimately convicted. Now we're at a point where the Justice Department has gathered the survivors of the families together and told them that they were going to execute him. Now, the son of one of the victims, his mother, he says that I would rather that he spend his life in prison instead. And this is always one of these issues that worries me. There may be no doubt that the 18-year-old did the crime, so this isn't a question of innocence. But the question of the state killing people when the feds have not for years, and choosing a case now as compared to others of a young person who is lost in hate is a wrong way to go, particularly when we're going to end up fueling violence in a way indirectly by the example of the government that it's okay to execute someone. And many years ago, Tim Kaine, who I think is a tremendous public servant, he's been, he's the mayor of Richmond for a while. He was governor after lieutenant governor, and he's now a U.S. senator. And he's a marvelous public servant. But when he was running the first time, I got a call from him, and it was very personable and substantive. And at one point he says, you know, John, you and I agree about capital punishment. And I said, well, I believe that, Tim, but in the state of Virginia, when you're governor, you're going to have to deal with it. And in the past, if it's the law, people in those offices have decided they have to go forward with it. And if you decide not to do that, that would be terrific. I would hope you would find a way to do that. But I'm hoping once elected, you'll be good on these other issues that I care about. And he was. But that's the dilemma for public officials. The public just want to kill. And they don't take into account the inconsistency between prosecuting somebody for such terrible violations and executing them. Now, while this case involving the 10 who were killed in Buffalo probably does not involve error, when you have these capital cases, you know, as a rule, we don't get them right. And we know from other non-capital cases how we're executing innocents, and we don't seem able to get around that. Another hobby horse of mine comes out of Oregon. Oregon has been telling the homeless that they can't sleep in the streets, and they can't have tents, and they can't have coverings. Now, for a long time I've said, and some places do this, public buildings should be open on cold nights. There should be a way to do that. The large public buildings we have to help the homeless, and so that they don't die in the street at night. Now in DC, the way I get in and out on the roads coming from Virginia, I go past places where there are these tents and there are people staying there. And I expect on this day that's so cold that they'll be there tonight. And that's in DC, that's not in Oregon. And I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court that's taking up the case will say that they can't forbid, outlaw homeless from taking steps to stay alive. It just should seem obvious, but I guess it's not so obvious to some. There's a movie about a 1972 plane crash in the Andes. Athletes who were good at rugby, and how they managed to survive the cold. And so that's fresh in my mind, and the temperatures there in the Andes, in the higher mountains where the plane crashed, don't make it a common experience for others. But if you wanted to consider all the possible delineations of what can happen to people in the cold, notwithstanding the crash in that case, you would have a new way of looking at how harsh we are to the people among us when we argue that we're a Christian nation, or have a Judeo-Christian ethic, or that we have this great value system that the world should look to us for. Well, I'm fine with that. I would like us to be an example to the world, but not hypocrites. I think we should do something about these things, not just be hypocritical about it. So, I've warmed myself up. It's pretty warm when I started, although the cold is piercing and the wind punches through, and there's a little bit of that today. So wherever you are, stay warm, go out if you feel robust, and particularly be careful this evening wherever you are, because it looks like the entire northern Arctic Circle has decided to come down upon us. So I say good day to you from my cathedral of trees. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.